Ladies and gentlemen, Microsoft's Director of Marketing and User Education for Microsoft's Languages Business Unit, Mr. Jim McCarthy.
That is something I have always wanted to do. Thank you for indulging me. Thank you for coming this morning. And we want you to know something. We've heard you. Thousands of programmers, just like you, have been asking for us to do one thing with C++ and Windows programming. Make it easier. Make it easier to get started, make it easier to use, and most importantly, make it easier to create great Windows apps. Visual C++ delivers. It delivers power to you, to your applications, applications that are going to have astonishing functionality and that'll dazzle your customers. As developers, we all know how it feels when the tool gets in the way of what you're trying to accomplish and stands between you and solving customers' problems. Visual C++ works the way you do. Now, in order to make a tool like that, there's a number of concerns you told us we had to address.
What I really want is an environment that lets me do everything, the editing, the creating, the analyzing, the debugging, the performance analysis, the rebuilding, and just do it all and do it quickly.
Things such as speed of compilation, improvement in the size of the EXE, things such as that, a good application framework, things which can justify moving, 2 million lines of code, C code, into C++.
I'd like to have a better development environment.
I'd like to see a way to develop applications that it's as easy as Visual Basic.
The whole goal of the computer industry is to reduce complexity.
Compile time is very wasteful for me. So speeding up the compile time would definitely make my job easier.
It is important that it's quick and easy for the developer to use, but even more importantly to me is that the executables are small and fast, because the customer is what really matters.
Denis Gilbert is the Group Development Manager on Team C++ at Microsoft. And Denis, tell us how you made it easier.
Tall order, Jim. Tough act to follow, too. Make C++ and Windows programming easier. What is that supposed to mean? What is it? Now, I think what programmers all over the place are telling us is, Microsoft, make it fast. Make fast tools, make my code fast, make the whole development process just sizzle. And you're also saying, Microsoft, make it tight. You're the Windows company. Give us a great set of Windows-hosted tools that are well integrated and work the way I do. And all our C++ customers out there are saying, Microsoft, make it reusable. Give us professional, customizable, extensible components that we can use in our own applications. And above all, Microsoft, protect our investment in the company and in your tools. That's what people are telling us. But finally, it all came down to a challenge. You said, Microsoft, you're the company that gave us Visual Basic. Let's see you pull it off with C++. Give us the ease of use and the fun of Visual Basic with the power of C++. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Visual C++. Okay. It seems only appropriate in this magnificent multimedia theater to build a multimedia application. So in a few minutes, we're going to build a multimedia viewer for Windows using Visual C++. What you see up here on your screen is called the Visual Workbench, and this is the centerpiece of the product. It has a compiler, a browser, project manager, help engine, everything you need to host all your development inside of Windows. And to make it really easy to get started, we created a tool called App Wizard. What App Wizard will do is do all the project startup work on your behalf and create a fully functional Windows application for you. Now, for this demo, let's put the application in the demo directory. And because we're building a multimedia player, we'll call the application player. Let's look at some of the options and some of the features that App Wizard gives us. I don't know if all of you can read that, but I have NDI, toolbar support, printing and print preview, VBX control support, context-sensitive help, DDE support, OLE. All of these features are available from my application by simply selecting a checkbox here. A lot of you have done this sort of stuff before, and you realize that it's thousands of lines of code to do on your own. As a consequence, your applications often don't have some of these features. Print preview, for instance, is easily 2,000 lines of C++ Windows code. You can have print preview in your application today just by checking this mark. For this demo, we're going to be using a Visual Basic custom control, so I'll select the VBX control checkbox and have a look at some of the classes that App Wizard is going to create for me. Those of you using C++ might be surprised that there are only 4 classes in my application. The reason for that is the new application framework, Microsoft Foundation Class version 2, gives you a lot of application level, high-level classes with a lot of canned functionality. So I can get away with only 4 classes in my application. At this point, it's giving me some customization options, for example, the implementation files for each of the classes. My document class will use Video for Windows files, so I'll tell it that I'm dealing with AVI files, and you'll see how that gets used in the application. Okay, so we've configured our project. We've told App Wizard how we want our project to be customized. And now we'll say, go ahead and do it. And App Wizard confirms that it's going to build an MDI application with all of the features that you see up on your screen. And I'll say, go ahead, create it. Done. 2 seconds, all the dependencies, all the make files are done. The project is constructed, and it's ready to be built and run. I can use a project drop-down here to see all of the files that have been added to my workbench, because the project's been loaded inside the workbench. Before we go on and build the application, I want to add a couple of cool visual, graphical, multimedia controls to it. So let's edit the RC file. Now, the RC file, as many of you know, is the user interface elements inside your program. The dialog boxes, the menus, the strings, the icons, and so on. This is a standard Windows SDK resource file. But one thing that is definitely not seen before is App Studio. And what App Studio is a fully professional resource editing tool that has 7 different resource editors all built in, and even a binary editor. As I bring up App Studio on the application that we created, I can use the resource browser here to look at all the resource types that App Wizard has created for me. And I can do a multiple selection here and see multiple instances of different types in the right-hand side. It's even possible, using App Studio, to open up 2 different projects and just drag and drop resources from one project to another. Now, instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is modify my menu to add a play command to play my video files, my multimedia files. And to do that, I'll bring up the menu editor. The menu editor is really a WYSIWYG editor. It shows you your menu exactly the way it will be displayed when your application is running. as is the case throughout this program, I can just grab something and I can drag and drop it to a new location. I can grab an individual menu item and reposition it. If I don't like what happened, I can do undo and redo again and go back all the way to the beginning. This combination of drag and drop, all these editors, and multi-level undo redo really make it for an easy-to-use professional tool to completely design your user interface. Now what I'm going to do is add a play command down here in my file menu, and watch what happens when I start typing the caption. This resource property window pops up. And all of the user interface elements, all of the objects inside my user interface have these resource property menus. And they're sort of float on top menus, and I can even pin them down if I like and browse through the other resources in my application. And this stays on top and shows me the different styles and attributes and so on. Now I can see my caption there as I typed it. Now because this is an application framework program, this is an MFC program, App Studio knows about the application framework, and it's given me an extra prompt field down there. What I can do there is type a one-line help message for my menu that will be displayed in the status bar of my program when it's running, and you'll see how that's used when the program runs. And we can do that because App Studio knows about the application framework. So I'll say play the video file. And dismiss that. Okay. IDs are figured out automatically and all that stuff. It just takes care of all of that for me. Now before I go on and add some code to deal with that new menu item, I'd like to have another visual tool inside my application. And to do that, I'm going to create a form view. Now a form view is a new high-level abstraction inside the application framework, and it's built using a dialog template. Using a dialog template lets us use the Windows Dialog Manager and the existing dialog management code inside the framework, so a lot of it is done for us on our behalf. So I've just brought up the dialog editor inside of App Studio to create my form. Now I'll be displaying the form inside an MDI child window, so I won't be needing the OK and cancel buttons. Notice the control palette on the right over here. This is a collection of all the standard Windows controls, and as is the case everywhere else, I can just grab one of those controls and drag it onto my form. So I'll add a legend here. Use the panel to play the file. Hitting a single key automatically sizes the field to the text that I've just entered in it. I can dismiss that. Now, what I'd like to do like you saw on the video when the orchestra was playing, and have a VCR-like control to control the playback of my file, so I can rewind, fast forward, stop, and so on. I could do that several ways. I could use standard Windows controls, check boxes and so on. It would look quite clunky, probably wouldn't be very slick. I could try to write my own graphics code, but that would take at least several hours, maybe several days to get right. It would be very complex. So to solve that problem, what I'm going to do is install a control into App Studio. What you see on your left is a collection of 19 visual controls that are shipping in a product this week called a Visual Control Pack. And these are the same controls that are shipping with Visual Basic Professional version 2.0, but they've been repackaged separately so that Visual C++ customers can use them as well. The new application framework includes support for VBX controls. So these really professional, reusable components are just there for the grabbing. So I'm going to install the media control interface, which is the one that I want for that VCR pad. On my control palette on the right here, I've now got a new icon. That's the media control interface icon. I'm just going to drag and drop that onto my form. And there it is. Done. I could select a couple of the controls and use some of these dialog adjustment tools here to size things up nicely. Let's look at what the properties for VBX control look like. Some of the property sheets have multiple panes, and I can use the combo box to select the different panes. Because this is a VBX control, I'll use VBX and Visual Basic Custom Control interchangeably. I can use it now to browse the different properties inside the VBX control itself. You probably recognize this. Some of you who have been using Visual Basic, it's compared to the drop-down combo or the combo box in VB. Now I'll set one of the properties to tell it that I'll be playing video files, because this is a general purpose multimedia control. And later when I write some code in my application, you'll see how I can set some of the VBX properties at runtime. Think of this as setting a property at design time. Finally, I'd like my dialog to appear like a form inside a child window, inside the MDI child window, so I won't be needing the frame around it. So I'm going to change a couple of the dialog properties to make that go away. And as a final change in App Studio, I'm going to make it have the same ID as the menu so I can deal with commands from the form interchangeably. All right, so we're all done. So that was pretty slick. No more dialog editor, no more image editor. All that stuff is in here. It's drag and drop. It's easy. But now comes the hard part for C++ programmers. Because what I'd have to do now is I'd have to go back into the code, think of some classes, write all the class definition code, make some member functions to deal with messages from this new UI element. And that's really hard to do, and it's also error-prone. So to solve that problem, we've created a tool called Class Wizard. Think of Class Wizard as your class editor. So far, we haven't written a single line of code, so stay with me here. Class Wizard knows that I've created a new form with a couple of new controls inside, so it's asking me for a class name to encapsulate the behavior of this form. So I'll give it a name and call it CPlayView. And I'll tell it that it's derived from the CFormView class in the framework. As was the case with App Wizard, it's suggesting some file names to put the implementations for the header and the code for this class. I could browse it. In this case, I'll select existing file names that are already used for the views. Create class. Okay, I've just written some code. I've just written a complete class definition, and I've just done all that code in the files that were created by App Wizard, which in itself was created automatically. So I've created a project, I've designed my user interface, I've just added a new class to it. This menu here is really the heart and soul of Class Wizard, and it's really fun to use. Up at the top, there's a drop-down which shows you all of the classes inside your application. So I select CPlayView, the form that I've just created, and I can see in the left-hand scroll box here all of the user interface elements. I see all my menu commands. I see, for instance, the form itself, which is really just another window. On the right side, I see all the Windows messages that go to and from the window. If I were to scroll down here and pick, for example, the VBX control, I can see all the Visual Basic notification messages for that control. So the game here is you pick something on the left, you pick a message on the right, and then you write some code to handle it. Now, you don't have to do that for all of the messages and all of the notifications because Windows or the application framework provides default handling for all of the messages. All I have to do is customize it for what's different about my application. In this case, we're going to need a command to deal with the play menu item. Before I do that, I'm going to add a couple of member variables inside that new class that I've created. I'm going to use these member variables to set some properties at runtime, like I mentioned earlier. I have one more to do here. Okay. Now, I've just created a class. I've just created some member variables inside that class. Now, let's create a function to deal with the play command. It gives me a suggestion on file play, which is fine. I'll accept that. And now I want to add some code, so let's do that. I double-click on that function name, and it takes me straight back to the workbench where I started, and even prompts me with a to-do line to add my line of code to deal with the file play menu item. So I'll do exactly that. I'll add a command here, which invokes a method inside the VBX control to play the VBX control, to play the current file. Okay, count with me here. This is one line of code so far I've added. I'm going to scroll up here and show you some of the other code that Class Wizard created for me. Class Wizard manages your message maps. Those of you who are familiar with Microsoft Foundation Class version 1 know about message maps. And it's sometimes hard to get the syntax right, and you make mistakes, and you forget to put your new messages in there. Class Wizard will do that for you automatically. Notice these special comments here that are in green. There's the end of one of them here and the beginning over here. What that is that denotes code that Class Wizard manages. And you're free to add all the code you want outside of these comments and go back and use Class Wizard to create, edit, or modify your classes. So it gives you the best of both worlds because you can use Class Wizard at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, anytime you want, and you can still customize the application as you see fit. In this case, one of the things that we want to do is we want the custom control to open the multimedia file when the form is created. So I went up into the constructor for my form and I added an open command. 2 changes. Another thing I want to do down here is when the custom control is created, instead of playing the same file all the time, I'm going to pick up the current file from the application framework. And you'll see how that works when the application runs. Okay, I'm done with this file. 3 changes. I'm going to edit one more file, and I can use the project dropdown to pick any file inside my project, and I'll edit the player.cpp file. I'll scroll down here and find the template that's sort of the entry point for my application. And I'll change the default view to use the cPlayView form, which I just created. And as a final coup de grace, instead of creating a new document when the application runs, I'm going to have it open an existing document out on disk. I'm done. 5 changes. I think you'll be blown away when you see the scope of this program. Now what I'm going to do is build my application. Now with conventional integrated development environments, I'd be here twiddling my thumb trying to think of something to say while the build is in progress. One really nice feature we added to the IDE is the capability to do your builds in the background. I can switch to other windows inside the workbench. I can switch to other programs and work on something else while the build is taking place. How long has it been since you wanted a tool like that? Let me show you some of the editor features. The editor is really a professional, full-featured, very fast programming editor. And we've incorporated color syntax highlighting for both C and C++. So for example, if I were to take this line, I were to add a comment to it, you can see right away that the color of the line changes to that of comment text. Or I can undo that change. Ooh, shoot, looks like my build is finished. Let's go see what happens. 0 error, 0 warning. I've just compiled and linked my entire application. So let's see what it looks like. I'll use the project menu to execute the application. It knows I made a change because it keeps track of changes in your files. The change was showing you that comment syntax coloring, so I don't need to rebuild. And I'll run the app. Now this gets a little confusing because I've got so many windows up. But the first thing it did was it prompted me with a file open dialog box. Recall that last change I made was to tell it to invoke the onFileOpen method when the program starts up. And automatically it uses the common file dialog, file open. Notice down here in the file types, it's already pre-programmed to use player files, namely the AVI extension that I had set back in the app wizard. I'm going to go back and pick up an AVI file that I have on my machine and load it. Let me maximize the application. What you're looking at now is the application that we just built. It's running, it's operational, it's fully debugged. Let's look at some of the things inside. Obviously, you can see it's an MDI application. The form is displayed inside a client window. And here's something really interesting. The form is scrollable. I don't know how many of you have ever tried to do like scrollable dialogues or scrollable forms, but it's easily a couple of hundred lines of code. You get this for free just by deriving your class from CFormView. So let me make that a little bit bigger. Sorry. Okay. There's the legend. There's the custom control I added. There's a file menu over here which has been completely initialized by the app wizard. It's even got a list of most recently used files, which is automatically managed by the framework. It's got open, save as, and all of these commands are all operational. They're all hooked up to code for me. There's a clipboard menu, which is currently disabled, but as soon as I add implementations for clipboard support, the commands will automatically be enabled on my behalf. There's a toolbar and a status bar, which can be toggled on and off. The status bar is down at the bottom there. Look, when I select a play command, you can see the legend that I typed originally in App Wizard down at the bottom there. That's automatically been done for me by the app framework. And there's an MDI window manager over here, which does all your standard window management functions, including keeping a list of open windows for you, numbering them automatically. And also the MDI manager takes care of labeling the windows with the name of the current file. The toolbar is really cool. That's also operational, so I can use a toolbar to open a file and bring up another AVI file. I can use the MDI menu and cascade or maybe tile these menus. And all of this has been done for me in what, a matter of 10, 15 minutes. It's fully functional, robust Windows application that is still extensible. That toolbar is not frozen in concrete. There are like over 20 APIs that I can use inside my application to turn it into a user-configurable toolbar. I can use the App Studio menu editor, or rather the graphics editor, to add new bitmaps to it or customize it to my own taste, including adding things like combo boxes or text fields, and use it as a ribbon. You're probably all anxious to see what some of these files do, so let's just play it. Here's me in my tights last week. Okay, let's try this one. It's our local symphony. Okay, there you go. A full-featured, really professional C++ Windows application in minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Visual C++. Let's go back and look at some of the things that we saw during the demo, and let's see how Visual C++ deals with the problems that we identified earlier. First of all, it's clear that AppWizard is the fastest and easiest way to get started with writing a new C++ Windows application. It follows the same steps that you would follow to create a Windows application on your own. But don't make the mistake of thinking that AppWizard is a case tool or a code generator in a conventional sense. It's actually much better than that. It generates very little code. If you were to look at all the code that I generate for that application, I think there are at max maybe 700 lines. And most of it is just bookkeeping code. It derives classes from the framework. It overrides a couple of them. It's really a very small amount of code, making it very easy to customize the application to your needs. Visual C++ is there when you need it. There's over 10 megabytes of online help information, and it's all Windows hosted, and it's never more than a keystroke away. You want API help, you can get it in ClassWizard, you can get it in a workbench anytime you want. There's over 150,000 lines of sample source code, real Windows applications, complete applications to learn and to draw from. We've completely revamped the tutorials for Visual C++. So there are extensive tutorials that take you from AppWizard right through to the completion of a professional app with features like context-sensitive help, print preview, splitter bars to split your window into multiple panes, configurable toolbars, the whole kit and caboodle. And all of the Microsoft Foundation class version 2 source code is still provided in the product. That's over 60,000 lines of professional, expert C++ Windows code. Probably the best C++ code you'll find today. And it's there for you to learn from, to study, to customize, and to extend to suit your needs. And please remember, wizards are your programming assistants. Wizards make it easy to get started. They connect your user interface to code. They manage your message maps. But they don't limit the way you work. You can use them as little or as often as you like, whenever you like. And because wizards write the code for you, they always write correct code. So you're free from making syntax, errors when you're declaring classes and all of that grunge, making you a more productive Windows programmer. We made it easier and we made it faster. We made it really, really easy to use precompiled headers so that everybody can take advantage of faster compile times through the science of precompilation. We sped up linker performance at least by a factor of 2, and we made great headway in speeding up the raw compile time. We made great improvements in the ability of our debuggers to load applications, especially large applications. The people at Microsoft who work on Word and Excel, for instance, they've been using these tools for some months now, and they report that applications like Excel, monstrous applications when they have all the debug info, load in less than 30 seconds with Visual C++ compared to several minutes in the past with earlier debuggers. And all of the debuggers have built-in hardware debug register support. So not only does your application load faster, but when you're running the application under the debugger, it also runs at full speed when you have watch points and breakpoints set because of the debug register support. While C7 set the standard for code quality, we think that Visual C++ is even better. We've added a feature to the linker called Smart Linking, which discards unused or uncalled functions, thereby making the link step faster. We're not done yet. Making the link step faster and also making the XC smaller because it doesn't have all that baggage to carry around. We added 386 code generation. So if you're targeting 386 machines or above, you can throw this switch and we'll generate optimized 386 code, which will make your application run faster and in some cases also smaller. This is an interesting one here. What we did is we collected all the make files and all the sample code which we could find, and we looked at how people were using the compiler options. And then we talked to our compiler team, many of which are here today, and said, give us the best set of compiler options to make smallest and fastest, really smallest and fastest. So we created a couple of new switches, which are like really smallest, really fastest, and you can get these, with a checkbox in the project options. And this will give you the advantage of picking the best set of compiler options as determined by the compiler group, and that makes your own application sizzle. Despite new levels of abstraction, all these application level classes, all this canned functionality, we picked the best C++ Windows programmers the company had to offer, and we had those guys work on the Microsoft Foundation class version 2. Rigorous size and speed tuning means that an MFC application is quite often just as efficient as an equivalent C SDK application. And we've been hearing you. A lot of you guys and gals who are using MFC1 have been asking for a DLL implementation. So we provide for MFC2 a DLL implementation of the library. And that means that when you have multiple MFC clients running on the same machine, they can share the same code inside of the MFC DLL library, thereby making your XCs smaller again. And you asked us to make it tight. All the tools you saw today, App Wizard, App Studio, Class Wizard, and the Workbench, they were designed from the ground up to work together as a system. App Wizard makes it easy to get started. App Studio is your user interface editor. Class Wizard is your class editor. And the Workbench is that centerpiece, which is the compiler, the project manager, the browser, and the debugger, which ties it all together. We're really, really proud, and I don't want to understate this, of providing what is probably the most robust and professional Windows-hosted integrated C++ debugger. It is completely integrated inside of the environment. It works with both soft and hard mode. And soft mode is really cool, because what that means is you could be debugging a program, and you can stop halfway through in the debugger and just switch to something else. You can call WinHelp and look up an API that you're stuck on. You can switch to the browser and chase down a function call in the function call tree. Or you can look up a derived class graph and find the base class for maybe the class that you're dealing with, and then just go back to the debugger and keep the app and proceed with running the application. You can even modify source code when you're in the debugger. You didn't get a chance to see the browser or the debugger during the demo because we really have short time this morning. But I encourage all of you to go out on the show floor this week and ask the booth staff to show you the debugger and the browser in Visual C++. You'll really be blown away by how good these tools are. You asked us to deliver on the promise of reusability. I want to get one thing straight first. First, we reuse your code. If you wrote code using C7 and Microsoft Foundation class version 1, we'll recompile all that code and we'll link it with the new library, and you get all the new features for free. We've built the new framework on top of the existing one. It is fully compatible with it. And we're going to protect your investment through the entire family of Windows systems, right through the Windows NT and 32-bit versions of the application framework. That's a guarantee. In the demo, we saw reusability at work. We used the Visual Basic custom control as our visual interface. We reused toolbar support, status bar support, NDI support. We derived our own form from the form view class inside the application framework. MFC is a real application framework, including a lot of high-level abstractions, a lot of canned functionality, like all that file handling for you, and a lot of new architecture classes specifically for application design, classes like documents and views and printing support. It's all expertly written, and it's all designed specifically to be reusable and extensible by you. And finally, we asked people what it is about Visual Basic that they really liked. And they said, what I really like about VB is the ability to connect code to visual elements of my program, to visual UI elements. And that's exactly what Class Wizard does for you. Class Wizard understands the way App Studio works. It understands the way the app framework works, and it understands the way Workbench works. Class Wizard can create new classes for you and derive them from existing classes inside of the framework. It can also edit and manage your message maps. But Class Wizard, incidentally, allows you to work with real C++ code and real resources, exactly the way you do. Okay? Earlier, we saw App Studio and we used the menu and dialogue editors. You didn't get a chance to see the bitmap editor, the icon editor, the cursor editor, the accelerator table editor, the string editor, I don't know what else, the binary editor. And all of the tools that you saw, it's all you need to create a visual interface with Windows. And property windows, drag and drop everywhere, and this multi-level undo and redo make it really easy to use these powerful tools to quickly sculpt your own visual interface. And here's an important consideration. App Studio is 100% compatible with your files. We will read all your RC files, all your res files. In short, we read all ASCII and binary, and we write the same thing back. So we can even read your DLLs and your XCs and your reses and your DLGs, all of them. It's 100% compatible. App Studio also works the way you do. You can see we're really excited about Visual C++, but don't just take our word for it. Listen to what some of our early customers have got to say about the product.
Well, what I really like about Visual C++ is that it makes Windows application development really easy.
Most of all, the MFC, I think it's just fantastic. The direction in which the foundation classes is moving, especially the architecture classes, I think it makes a lot of difference to the way in which people are going to program applications.
I discovered that in a matter of minutes I had an application working that had all the print preview and everything else built right into it, and I didn't have to do any work. I mean, it just happened for me.
The App Wizard, App Studio, and Class Wizard functions allow you to develop a relatively complex program in a very short time.
Before Visual C++, we spent at least 50% of the project building the user interface. Visual C++ allows us to do this literally in a few minutes.
There are three technologies that help Windows programmers cut the task of programming down to size. C and C++ for small, fast executables, object-oriented programming for managing complexity, and visual programming for extremely rapid development. Visual C++ incorporates all those three technologies and integrates them in a uniquely effective, fun-to-use way.
It allows you to visually develop your application. It also takes care of many of the mundane chores.
The ease of use and what have you of the Microsoft utilities just blows the competition away.
Within just a few minutes, you can develop a C++ application. That was simply not true before.
Visual C++ not only makes it easier than ever to develop professional, top-quality Windows applications, but it makes it fun.
We're proud to provide to you the shortest path to C++ and Windows programming. And we're proud of our reputation as the code quality leader. We've maintained that lead and improved it with Visual C++. And we're committed to your success as a developer. We're in this for the long run. And that's why Microsoft Foundation classes and Visual C++ are the safe choice in Windows programming. Visual C++ is available in 2 editions. It's the successor product to C7, and you'll be given an information packet on your way out with data on exact upgrade prices and so on. Where's my box? This is the best thing about Visual C++. This is available today, essentially. It released to manufacturing last week. It's being built as we speak and will be available in stores and from catalogs in the first week or 2 of March. I'm also happy to say that Visual C++, all the features you saw here today, will be available on Windows NT in the 3rd quarter of this year. And that's not all. We have 4 other new products that we're announcing today. Denis referenced the Visual Control Pack, which is the collection of custom controls. We're also announcing a hot new Fortran compiler, a visual version control system, and the Microsoft Developer Network. The Visual Control Pack is something designed to enhance the productivity of programmers. It has 19 custom controls, previously only available to Visual Basic programmers, but now available to Visual C++ programmers. We have 6 3D widgets. We have a charting control, a serial communications control. And we also have some things that exploit advanced Windows capability, like pen computing, the multimedia control you saw earlier. And of course, there are something like 100 vendors of Visual Basic custom controls. We're also including in this package the custom control development kit, so that you can build your own custom controls and use them in either Visual Basic or Visual C. Fortran Power Station is our first 32-bit Fortran compiler. It's hot. It screams like a banshee. It competes with workstation-grade compilers and with no real loss of ease of use. It uses the Visual Workbench technology that you saw in Visual C++. I would encourage you to check it out down at the booth later. And also check out Microsoft Delta version control. This is the visual version control system for Windows, with point-and-click access to all the version control functionality that you come to need and expect. And it also has a very cool feature, a visual differencing engine that gives you changes from file to file using syntax coloring. Every Microsoft product that we ship depends on Microsoft Delta technology. Now, before we open up to a few questions, I'd like to talk about one more new product that I think really underlines our commitment to the development community. You asked us for more information about Windows programming, and the Microsoft Developer Network CD is our response to that. Over 40,000 programmers, probably a lot of you in this audience, have been participating in the beta program for the Microsoft Developer Network CD. The feedback has been great. So today, I'm happy to announce that we're formally launching the Microsoft Developer Network. It's a $195 annual subscription. It's kind of a new idea. And what we do is create a CD that's updated and sent to you every quarter. Also, you get a bi-monthly newsletter, the Developer Network News. I think that there's a special show edition that was put in every conference bag. But you really have to see this MSDN CD to appreciate it. So we're going to spend just a few moments to take a quick look at it. Denis?
Yeah, thanks. They gave me like 4 minutes to give you a demo of this product. I blew away the entire weekend playing with this thing, and I still wasn't done by the time Sunday rolled around. But I'll try. This is the viewer window that comes up when you've got the CD loaded and you're searching or browsing for different topics on the CD. There's the equivalent of about 100,000 pages of Windows programming documentation and sample code on this CD. And it's all cross-referenced, it's all hyperlinked, and it's really information at your fingertips for Windows programming. And it's updated 4 times a year. I think the subscription cost is like $195. Walk, don't run when you leave this place. Go and buy this thing. You cannot be without it. Let's look at some of the things that we have available on the browser window or the index windows, it's called up here. The first one is technical articles. There are over 140 different technical articles on this pre-release version of the April CD. Each one's about 20 to 100 pages long. There's sample code for all of it, and it's all written exclusively for the CD. Going down to the next item, I've got sample code. This simple category over here contains 700 different sample programs, all new, all written specifically for the CD. They're all documented, they're all tested, all the source code is online. So let's just, I have one personal favorite I just have to show you over here in the technical articles, the GDI sample. Here we go, lava. Double-clicking on the name of the sample brings up the viewer window, and then I can scroll down and look at the documentation for it. And I'll click this icon to see the files that are in the project, and I'll just double-click on the XE to run the XE off the CD. And we make it go fast. Here we go. Okay. This is a lava flow simulator using GDI graphics to do all the animation. I was so turned on by this thing, I wrote my own screensaver Sunday night for Windows. Okay, now here's what I meant about that hyperlinking. The value in this CD is all of these articles, this sample code, you know, Petzol's book, Duncan's book, the SDK books. It's all cross-referenced. So I've got here an API. If I click on that API, it takes me straight to the Windows SDK book where the definition of that API is located. And I can do that with all of the references that are on the CD. Let me go down and look at resource and strategy. A lot of you guys have been asking for this stuff. The DPMI specification, the MAPI specification, the WOSA specification, the NDIS driver specifications, all here in one convenient place. The graphics, the text, all the sample code is online. In April, we'll have all the OLE 2 documentation online as well. Let's go down and look at the knowledge base. You asked for bug lists for Microsoft development tools. Here they are, 8,000 different articles. Okay? This covers the entire spectrum of development tools, and it's not only bugs and how-tos, but workarounds and tips and tricks from Microsoft's product support services and from other users like yourself. And this includes products like Fox and Access and Landman and SQL Server, in short, all of the development tools at Microsoft. And even a 1 or 2 entry for C7. Okay. Full books, and not just Microsoft books and technical articles, but you know, Duncan's excellent book on DOS, Petzol's classic on programming Windows, 3 full years of Microsoft Systems Journal. This is great stuff. You know, when we get the April CD out, we'll have a bunch of articles from the Basic Pro magazine on VB. Product documentation, entire documentation sets from all the development tools. In April, when you get this CD, you'll get all the Visual C++ books online, and you can use this really cool viewer to just jump back and forth and hyper-travel throughout your Visual C++ documentation. Stuff like the DDK, the SDK, the Multimedia Programmer's Guide. All that is online. All our favorite old friends from the SDK, DD Spy, dialogue editor, dare I say, even a complimentary copy of MS Test for you to evaluate. But even better than that, we went through all the Microsoft development groups and we said, give us the best tools you got. Give us those homegrown tools that nobody wants to support, but which your livelihood depends on. And we collected the best of those and we threw them on the CD as well. So there's like Windows process viewers, memory viewers. There's self-study modules that our developers learn how to deal with dibs and palettes and that sort of thing. There's even a great set of macros and templates for authoring WinHelp files using Word for Windows, all in this unsupported tools category. There's another way to look at the information on the CD, and that's by doing a keyword search. What we took is we took all the SDKs, took all the function definitions, all the message definitions, all the structure definitions, we laid them all out in alphabetical order, so when you're looking for something, you can just start typing, say, destroy window, takes you straight to all the entries for destroy window, and in this case I found 3, one in the SDK, one in the Quick C programmer's reference, and one in the Windows NT Win32 programmer's reference. So there it is, the entry from the Win32 programmer's reference. The Windows for NT Win32 pre-release SDK is also on this CD. And finally, if that browser doesn't do it for you, you can't find it this way, there's another thing you can do, and that's do a search. And this is like a context-sensitive search, and you can use Boolean operators, and they'll just look for related terms in all of the articles. Last Friday, over one of our aliases, somebody asked how to overload the new operator to use the global heap. And this is a search that I typed in. And what's going on right now is just searching through the equivalent. Looks like we're on page 600 there. Think about what we're doing. This is 100,000 pages of documentation, not only the Microsoft books, but the MSJ articles and Petzol's books and everything else. And I found 17 topics. Never before has this sort of information been available. Okay. Yeah, one more thing. This is so cool. Here's an article in the MSJ, one of the old MSJ reviews about exactly overloading the new operator, written by Steve Sinofsky. And as was the case before, I can still, hyperlink back to the Windows SDK and look up that global alloc function call. It's a really cool tool. Go buy this thing, get with the program. You can't afford to be without it.
We told you we were listening, and we have a few minutes left to listen to some more here. So there's a couple of microphones. If you care to ask us any questions, we'll do our best to respond. So what about C8, Denis?
There seems to be a lot of confusion about C7, C8, Visual C++. Visual C++ is C8. It's also Quick C++ for Windows. Okay? The standard edition is your Quick C for Windows upgrade. The professional edition is your C7 upgrade. In fact, when you run the compiler from the command line, it'll say version 8. This is a C8 compiler that's in the box.
Yes. If I have a lot of source code written in Borland C++ and I use Object Store, which doesn't support Microsoft C7, can I use that as an object and link it in with my C7 or Visual C++?
I don't know. I don't have too much experience with that stuff. Derek, do you have here? Greg works on the...
We have a couple of our key experts.
The entire development team is down this week, so if we don't answer your questions, we got a lot of smarter
purple
people
shirts.
than me
Look
over
for
there.
purple shirts
Yeah.
and tuxes.
There's a couple issues involved there. If you're talking about, are you talking about OWL code or just generic C++ code?
Generic C++.
You can recompile that in Microsoft Visual C++ with no problem. Borland and Microsoft do have different layouts of object module formats. So you couldn't just take a Borland library and link it in, but you certainly could recompile it in Visual C++.
That's what I can't do because of Object Store.
Well, we can, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but grab me afterwards and we can talk some more about it.
Okay, yes.
If I drive my own classes, does your class wizard or whatever work with those as well?
Class Wizard works with classes that are command targets only, right? So you have to derive classes from the application framework. But there's like over 100 different classes in there, so it depends on whether or not you can find a class inside the framework that fits your bill.
But I can't add my own to that list?
You can derive from any of the classes in the framework and use those with Class Wizard.
Your own.
You can't just use
your own derivations.
Okay, but if I drive something and have modified it, I can then have that there?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I request some higher level objects that relate your Visual C++ to Excel over and above those that are mentioned in the Excel SDK.
Okay.
Higher level.
I think there's a great place for asking Microsoft developers on how to extend the class library to fit specific application needs. When is your talk, Greg? 11:30 to 12:30. Okay. In here or? 11:30 to 12:30, there's a talk specifically on Microsoft Foundation Class 2.0, and it goes into some of the design and architecture, and really the best thing to do is figure out how to fit in with the class library, and that's the best way to go. Yes, sir.
I have two quick questions. The first is that does Visual C++ require to use C++ as opposed to just straight C?
No, not at all.
So you can still use C?
Yes. In effect, it's a superset of C7.
Okay, so you can still code everything in
That's
C.
right.
And, okay.
You can use the browser and the debugger for C code. You can build DOS apps. It does DLLs.
Right. Resource editor still works.
Okay, my second question is, I'm getting the impression that C is pretty dead and everything's going to C++. As a C programmer, is this a pretty good sign?
This product is targeted at C programmers that want to become C++ programmers. And
so make the move.
Make the move. It's worth it. We found it to be worth it. But what we try to do is tilt the equation a little bit so that the payoff was so great and the pain so little that it was a change you'd make.
Let me mention something. App Studio, Class Wizard, and App Wizard, they were all written using Visual C++ in the application framework. This stuff works. Okay, it's really worth making the move. It just makes it a lot easier. We couldn't have shipped it without it.
Thanks.
Okay, as I said earlier, all of the development team is here this week. Some of them are leaving tomorrow. Do take an opportunity to go out to the show floor and ask them anything you like. And buy Visual C++ and visualize your masterpiece.
Yep, do it.